Hello and welcome to What the Hey, where I'm your regular host of What the Hey, and today on What the Hey, I'm not doing a What the Hey, I'm doing another book review with a boy. Today I'm reviewing The Lightning Thief, which is part of the Percy Jackson and the Olympians series. All of the books in the Percy Jackson series were written by Riordan, so that's the person you have to thank for making such a cool and unique series. So before I go into the plot and the characters of this book, I'm gonna go into the basic facts about the book. So The Lightning Thief, which is the first book in the Percy Jackson series, was officially published on July 1st of 2005, so it's been out for a good bit of time. The book has been published by Miramax, Puffin Books, as well as Disney Hyperion, so those are the different publishers if you want to check them out. In terms of content in the book, there are 22 different chapters and 377 pages to read through. In terms of genre, a lot of people consider the Percy Jackson series to be fantasy, Greek mythology, and the audience is usually catered towards young adult, but pretty much anyone can read it. So now that that's out of the way, I'm going to explain the plot. So when explaining the plot, I'm probably going to use pictures from the first movie for this book, just so we're all clear. The movie is not accurate to the book, at all, but just so you have some, visualization of the characters and stuff, and for the plot, I'm going to use those just so you kind of have an idea of, what the world kind of looks like. So in terms of plot, there's basically this kid who's the main protagonist of the series called Percy Jackson, who is raised by his really nice mother Sally, and he generally does poor in education in school. In his story, he encounters many monsters and gods because he finds out that he's a demigod and the son of the Greek god Poseidon. So Percy has to go on this really grand adventure to return Zeus's Master Bolt because the gods believe that Percy Jackson possibly stole it. Percy has a lot of allegations against him that he works through with his friends Grover and Annabeth. So essentially the entire first book is Percy having a lot of allegations against him for stuff that he didn't even do, and that just becomes an entire problem for him. So now I'm going to talk about the main characters from the story. There are a lot of characters in the first book, but I'm going to mainly include the ones that are mentioned the most. And once again, for context, I'm going to use pictures from the movie. The characters in the movie aren't exactly accurate to what the book portrays them as, and I'll kind of explain that with specific characters. So the protagonist of the story is Percy Jackson, who is a demigod. He can control water because he's Poseidon's son, and he has ADHD and dyslexia, which works its way into the book. The next important character would probably be Grover Underwood, who is Percy Jackson's friend, who is actually a satyr. He goes along on Percy's journey because it can possibly fulfill a possible assignment for Grover, but he also goes along to just help Percy in general. The next important character would probably be Annabeth Chase, who is the daughter of Athena, and she helps Percy on his quest by creating plans and being intelligent because she is really smart. Annabeth Chase is described differently than how she is portrayed in the movie, which is so weird, and I don't even know why that choice was made, but there's a movie visualization for you. Just know it's not accurate. The movie in general is just not that accurate. The next important character would be Chiron, who is basically a mentor to Percy. He's actually a centaur, and he gives wisdom. Another character that's mentioned quite a few times would definitely be Hades, who is the god of the underworld. He believes that Percy has stolen his Helm of Darkness, which becomes a problem later in the book. Kronos is the character in the book that antagonizes Percy. We don't really encounter Kronos in the book. He's mentioned a lot, but we just don't really encounter him. But he basically is just a big, mean, spooky voice, and that's about it. Poseidon in the book is Percy's dad, and we don't really meet him until later in the book, but he helps Percy to basically get his water manipulating powers and helps him kind of with guidance throughout the book, but we don't really meet him until later. Zeus is the Greek god of the sky, and in the book he basically believes that Percy has stolen his most powerful weapon known as the Master Bolt. There's a bunch of other characters in the book that are mentioned, like Krusty, Pan, Cerberus, Auntie M, just characters like that are mentioned, but they're not as important to the story as the main characters. Now I guess I can go into my general thoughts. So I've only read the first book in the series, but I really enjoyed it. My best friend is actually the one who gave me this copy of the first one and then the next two in the series. But in terms of the first book, I think it was really wonderful. One of the best things that I liked about it was the enjoyable writing. I'm the kind of person who will not enjoy a book unless the writing itself is fun and not like strict or serious. Like, of course it's a book, a lot of time and effort was put into it, but like if you make all the jargon like strict and it just seems more serious than it actually is, then I'm not gonna enjoy it, but I like this one. The font wasn't extremely small, so it was like easy to read through, and I felt like I could get through a lot of chapters pretty quickly. Another thing that I really liked about this book was the fact that there was a mix of Greek mythology put into like modern kind of culture. Like the locations that the characters went to were like mainly places in the United States, so like I could kind of relate to where the settings and stuff were. But in general, the relatability of the book was like pretty easy and nice to get into. Another thing that I found really cool about this book was that the author of the book, before publishing it, had multiple people read through it to kind of give like an okay, this is good. And the people who read through it would be really young or they could be really old, but Rick was like, I'm just gonna have a bunch of different people read through it so I have like a general like consensus of people who are like, yeah, this is good. Another thing that Rick Riordan did really well was including things like dyslexia and like disabilities into the book, because like Percy Jackson, the main character, had like ADHD and dyslexia. Like Rick Riordan, for Percy Jackson specifically, had Percy Jackson have like dyslexia and ADHD to kind of like represent the fact that Percy Jackson was like a demigod, like half human, and his like senses were heightened and stuff, so he wasn't normal, and he kind of made like dyslexia and ADHD like work with the story, and I thought that was cool. But yeah, in general, if you're looking to get into something that's like fun and it's like also has something to do with like Greek mythology or history in general, I would say this is definitely a good series to get into. I'll definitely do book reviews on these once I get through them because I've enjoyed this book so far, so I think I'll enjoy these as well. If I had to pick a favorite character, I would probably say that Grover Underwood was probably my favorite character. I don't know if I'll see him in the other books, like read about him, because he's like, at the end, he goes on like this adventure, which you'll read about if you read the book, which I would say, read the book. So that's essentially the review of the book from my perspective, so if you have any questions about it, or if you have any suggestions for books that I should read once I get through like the entire Percy Jackson series at some point, let me know, but thank you so much for watching. Bye!